Welcome to another episode of Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned podcast. I'm really excited today because the topic that we are diving into is the power of support, how true partnership enhances leadership and alignment. And so I thought, why not invite my husband, Gerard Roy, to be a part of the podcast today? Because this is something that we've navigated together, that we're very committed to working on. And also, Gerard is the president of Lubrico Warranty. So he has lots of great business experience, leadership experience. And so this whole culmination of not just us as a couple, as partners in life, we're really partners in business too in so many ways. When I have challenges, I go to Gerard. Often he comes to me for support as well. So thanks for joining.
Oh, happy to be here. Normally having this over coffee and a tea in the morning, but
or a bubbly.
Or a bubbly.
So cheers to the conversation. Yep. As you know, we like to pop the cork when you need to celebrate. And I think this conversation we're going to have today really is about celebration, about how you celebrate together through communication and connection and honesty and all sorts of things. So what inspired today's conversation actually was I was listening to a little podcast myself last week, and I heard this quote from Emily Blunt, who is married to John Krasinski, and she's also starring in the new movie that's just coming out with Ryan Gosling called The Fall Guy. So I was inspired by this interview that I heard from her. And it was that the interviewer was asking her how her husband, who also is an actor, and I'm sure they both lead very busy lives, how she dealt with, or how he dealt with being jealous of different situations that she was in, or obviously starring beside Ryan Gosling, there might be a little something come up with that. And I loved her answer, which was, she actually seemed really genuinely surprised by this question, because she just said, he doesn't have that jealousy bone. He literally doesn't have that. All he has is this support for me in such a deep, genuine way that he wants to amplify and elevate my greatness. And that's what we do for each other. And so I guess I'm just really grateful, she said, that this is the type of support I have, because we're just about helping each other on each of our journeys separately. And then how do we amplify that together? So it reminded me of us. And I wanted to talk about it.
Very cool.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think support is so important. I think every person wants to be supported. They want to feel like what they're doing in life and business, personal, that someone's got their back and they believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
I did not see the interview, so I apologize for that. I did not see the interview, but I thought it was really interesting that you talked about the jealous part.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've shared with me a few times that the one thing you love about me is I'm not a jealous person, and that's fair enough, because I think, like, I'm not jealous, I'm proud, right? When I see you and your greatness, when I see even someone on my team and their greatness, it makes me proud. It makes me happy for them. And I know for us as a couple, I just think anything that you do that's great, it not only does it shine a light on you, but to me, it shines a light on us, and it makes me want to be better. And it just makes me so proud of you. And I just think it's really important that we do have each other's back and we support each other. And there's not this competition, let's call it, on, who's doing better or whatever it may be. So
it's actually really interesting when I think about that specific chip, which I don't want to spend a ton of time on. But I remember when we first met, it was almost like, is there something wrong with me? Like, how is it that, because I'd come from a very different relationship in the past, who was completely the opposite. So meeting you, and literally, I can't remember a time in our entire marriage where this is something that's come up. You are just confident in yourself and really supportive of me achieving my dreams. And that it's Chip, you just don't have it. So I don't know. I guess it's really good for me. But I hadn't thought about it until, I hadn't really thought about it until I heard it from her. So when we talk about supportive relationships, let's dive into what are some of the other really important, because it more just sparked for me thinking about all the things that really matter. And I know that it's some of the things we've talked about is that shared vision, that you're on the same page. Maybe you're going a different direction on that page, but you share the vision of where you're going as a couple. You have shared values. That, I think, is something we've learned is undeniable. And that you do really have this belief that you're here to help the other person shine their light as strongly as they can in the way that they're meant to shine it. What are some other things, or what do you have to kind of comment on that?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So. I think one of the things that I thought about at the beginning, you talked about trust, and trust is a two-way street. It's easy, number one, for me to trust when you full-heartedly trust back, right? And when there's that two-way dialogue of you being so supportive and loving, how am I not going to do the same thing? And when we talk about the commitments, the values, the vision, I think it's important that we're walking in alignment step by step. We're on in the same direction. We talk about continuing to learning and growing. And us as a couple, if we're not in alignment of those things, if we're doing things that maybe you're doing something that I don't agree with and vice versa, it creates, I think, a tension. I think an awkwardness, and then it's just not free flow, right? So I think the importance of communication, sharing that vision, making sure we have those discussions, saying, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking," or when we were out that night, I was a little uncomfortable with this part of the conversation, or even from a business perspective, this is like sometimes we may hear each other speak. Sometimes you may ask me a question, going, "Were you a little bit, angry about this or upset about that?" And 9 times out of 10, I was like, "No, it was actually a very incredible conversation. It was passion. It was this I was really excited about. Let me tell you about it." But let's say it wasn't quite so much that. It was something that wasn't so great, or how do you think we should handle a certain situation? Because sometimes I think it's really important to understand a different viewpoint, because I don't know, we may not always see things the way we think things are. And I think that different perspective is very helpful.
Yeah, I think that's great timing to say to everybody listening, we are nothing alike. And so that's where the shared vision, shared values piece becomes really important, because no two people ever are alike, whether you're in business as leaders or it's your family or your spouse or your friend. Like, we are all designed to be very unique human beings, except we kind of judge people through the lenses of being like us. And that in itself is where so many challenges come. So I want to dive into communication. But before we do that, I do want to give everyone sort of an inspired action with all of our different thoughts, is really take the time to sit down with, again, whether this is business or personal, and with any of those situations, understand that shared vision, create that together. We've done the work. So we're sitting here today, 18 years in a relationship. And that was me trying to do math in my head. 18, 19 maybe. And so it's saying 19 years in, we continue to evolve and we continue to do that. Hey, is the vision still the same?
Yeah.
And I would say we do that at least a couple of times a year, where it's checking in on, are we still in alignment with the vision? we do a lot of the work of learning and growing. And so every time we change as a person, are we still on the same path with our shared vision? And then really checking in on the values. So take the time to do that. That's worth a glass of bubbly or a cup of coffee or tea, and spend the time together with the people around you to do that. So let's dive into communication now. This is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
And we laugh because we are literally, any assessment that you're going to do, we are going to be on opposite ends of that spectrum in every way, shape, and form. And so quickly we can say how important understanding other people has been, and finding tools like assessment tools that we've used, and we're going to dive into a little bit. But I was one of the, I don't think I've ever met anyone as polar opposite as me in sort of how we communicate with, tone of voice and just different perspectives and lenses, and how we can see different situations and empathy and all these great things that are part of our personalities. So what do you got about communication, Gerard? Like, where do we start unpacking that one?
You know what? Fascinating. I've learned so much through you, and I think
Together.
and I really think, just number one, you have to first learn about yourself, right? Laurie always told me that I was always a competitive SOB, and I think I always underestimated how competitive I am. And I started asking around and asking some friend, they're like, "Oh yeah, Gerard, you're competitive." And I knew I was, but I guess maybe not to the degree I was. But that was one thing. I think that the number one thing that you and I learned, Laurie, because we are such opposites, and we got in trouble with this earlier in our relationship, is when we're under stress, or whenever we're in a discussion, let's call it. I don't want to say argument, but we're into that. Debate.
You love that word.
I love the word debate. I love debates. And so when we get into debates, it was really fascinating because I would go right straight to the logic, right? Get into the numbers, get into the data. And then you would start from the emotion side of things. Mm-hmm. And there's no right or wrong to this, right? It's just who we are as people. Mm-hmm. But I think what was fascinating, what we learned, is that we always come full circle. Mm-hmm. And we always would, but that beginning, there would be that tension because I would want to throw numbers out there in data.
It's just because we start in a different place.
We start in a different place. And then you'll start, well, how about this? How about that? How about how this person would feel? Or is that really how it is? Or, and, we'd have this conversation, and then and it would, it would be like this. But what happened would be is once we got to a certain point, Gerard moves to emotion. Mm-hmm. And then you would start going into the logical, right? And we would, the viewpoints, we eventually would agree on the same thing, but how we got there was different. And because we didn't start off in the same place, we would argue. Mm-hmm. Like, let's be honest about this. We would argue. Mm-hmm. And then, an hour later, we're saying the same thing. Mm-hmm.
And what I think is amazing is that we would actually have the heated conversation, the authentic conversation actually is probably the right word, because we were both experiencing frustration, and we were able to have it because we're willing to be vulnerable, and we come from a foundation of trust.
Right.
So when we look at leadership in organizations, if you can get people to actually do that, to do a little bit of fight and unite, this is healthy. This is what builds great, powerful teams, decisions, partnerships. The ones that are quiet and go over to the water cooler, or the spouses that don't say a word and go to bed feeling something different or go tell their friends, that's the danger zone.
It's not healthy.
But we're kind of taught in our society the danger zone is the debate or the experience, going through that. No, we want to have the tough conversations. They're really important. They're worth it, and they're hard.
I think it's about how do you have healthy debate.
Yes.
is the really important thing. And I share this with it's not only in relationships, it's also within team relationships and whatnot. And my team and I, we talk about this. We talk about this all the time. The importance of having a healthy debate, and we talk about this. And kudos to Patrick Lencioni, the 5 dysfunctions of team. And the first part of it is that you have to have that trust, where there's confidence in one another, that you can be truthful and have the authentic conversation on this is how the person feels. And there's a way of doing that that's not rude or arrogant or so how do you say that and ask different questions and respectfully, maybe disagree or ask questions to really understand each other's viewpoint. And that's the first thing, the importance of the trust. And then that second part is the conflict. Is you have to have that healthy conflict and ask questions and really understand and debate and respectfully debate to have that. And then once that conflict happened, is how do we have there's got to be a commitment to something, right? So you and I will have a conversation, and then it's like, okay, do we understand each other? Make sure that we listen to one another. It's so important that we listen to one another, understand where the other person's viewpoints are, and then there's got to be a commitment to the thing, right? And even if there's, in teams, I think if there's not someone's got to break the tie, but once there's a commitment, we all have to be all in. And you and I talk about this all the time: are we all into what we agreed on? Do we agree? And then let's commit. And then, of course, there's the accountability factor to that we have to be accountable to the thing we committed to. And then, of course, the attention to results. And, do we deliver on that? So I think those 5 things are so important.
Just a quick lesson from the 5 dysfunctions of a team that we can throw the link in the discussion after to share a summary of that book with you, because it's very powerful. Not just he actually wrote a book as well that is there's the one for teams, and then there's also one just about people and relationships. I actually forget the title of that one, but I'll throw it in the notes as well. As you were saying that, I thought it's interesting, even the language piece, which this will be a whole other podcast. Even the word argument, right? Because it's actually not argument. And when we come at it from the place of argument, which I think is part of the challenge, it means there's a winner and a loser. Whereas I think that's even the growth of us as a couple, of, where we want to go in leadership, is it's a conversation, and it's a healthy conversation, even though it may be uncomfortable. Yeah. And when you both come at it from, we know we're different people, we know we're going to have different perspectives. I know you're going to start with logic. I'm going to start with emotion. Then we can sit down and say, okay, this might not feel great, right, because we have to get through something that is uncomfortable, or we're not in the same place. But when we come at it from a collaborative, we really do want to understand each other's perspectives in leadership and in partnership, then it's a whole different perspective than I've got to fight for my idea. And I also was going to say, we don't necessarily always agree. But I think there's one example from, 8 years ago still, where we do not agree on how we made decisions around some of the stuff with the kids. And yet we were able to come to a place where we have respect and love for each other. And even though there's sometimes, where Mr. Competitive over here really would like to hear me say, you're right. It's, I think healthy also allows that we may never agree on certain things, but we can agree on our shared vision and our values and our movement forward.
Should we do a survey on how the kids should be able to rake the leaves?
Oh, no, that wasn't even what I was talking about.
That's a whole other topic.
Yeah, we do have a leaf debate, people, from when the children were little and they had to rake leaves, and he would have liked them to just get the job done, and I would have liked them to play in the leaves, and we're still debating that. We still have our different perspectives on it. So one of the things is, back to sort of what's the inspired action with all of this, is I am like a fanatical, I have a fanatical desire to understand people so deeply that I started taking assessment, facilitation, certifications years ago, So I'm certified in 5 or 6 different assessment tools, and we've done them all. Some are great, some aren't. Some have a specific purpose and others have other purposes. And so what I truly understand at my core and believe at my core is that these tools are powerful in supporting us to heighten our own self-awareness, because we don't see what we don't see. Like, you had to ask 1,000 people if you were competitive before you actually thought it was true.
Who doesn't want to win, right?
Well, I still want to win. There is a difference. So, we don't see it. We can't fully see things. We only see them through our own lens. And so the tools help us see things from a shared lens. And so we've been through a few of these together. And I remember specifically one of the tools was DISC. And when we put those side by side, we were like, oh, that's really interesting. And then we layered into Myers-Briggs. And now the Myers-Briggs is actually the model that shows you the logic and emotion and how you navigate through the communication cycle. And so we had many ahas where it's like, oh. And then we didn't just go, oh, we actually said, how do we integrate these tools into our communication? And then a few years ago, my brother, who's CEO of a global organization, he sent me this tool called Cloverleaf. And he said, sister, I think you're really going to love this. And it's a tool, it's a online dashboard that takes 8 different assessment tools and pulls them all together, integrates them all, and then sends out daily coaching tips to you, your team, the people on your team that do it. And well, I set Gerard up under my organization so that we could get tips on each other. And he also has used it with his own leadership team as well. So we have loved this. We've laughed. We've actually had serious conversations about the different tips that come out. So I actually grabbed one. And often we will do this little, he'll send it to me or I'll send it to him. But these are so powerful in understanding each other.
I'm afraid which one you pulled out.
Well, today's for me says, because you are someone who builds relationships thoughtfully, you likely cherish those relationships. Make a point to evaluate your connections every so often to ensure they're still healthy and contributing positively to your life. If they aren't, establish new boundaries. Well, boundaries are something I have to constantly focus on. So actually, this was a forward from Gerard to me of a, hey, honey, maybe. But then his says, when Gerard is in a heightened state of stress, it's not the time to have a conversation about emotions. While emotional reflection is valuable, it's more effective for Gerard and better received when discussed during a state of calm.
Can't argue.
No, back to you saying even just earlier how I start with emotions.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
And you know what? I found those clover leaves so valuable because, I think about even that description. It is so true in the difference between, the little idiosyncrasies or that ain't the right word, but the details around when not bring emotion to me, right? It's under high stress, right? What does high stress mean, right? Under certain things, heightened level of I'm when I'm being emotional perhaps, or I'm in high stress, don't talk to me about emotion. I want to talk about logic. Like let's just get this solved and get it done. And then what's really interesting, you can listen to another one. And if I'm in calm and I'm in peace, I'm very good at talking about emotions and whatnot when things are a little bit more settled. So I found it really interesting. What's great about it is every single day you get something about yourself. It will remind you something about yourself, whether it's a strength. It could be a strength saying, hey, this is a superpower of yours.
Often it is.
Leverage it, use it. The team loves that about you. That's what you got to bring to it. Or it could be, hey, Gerard, and be careful about this. You've got this thing sometimes that maybe is a superpower, or it could also be a super weakness. depending on the situation. So you might want to be careful in your meetings, and then you'll have one on your team, and I find them very valuable because it's a reminder to say, hey, Bob, Bob can maybe be controlling at times. So maybe, as you're speaking to them, maybe just consider that, or consider a coaching when you're coaching them, maybe just consider ways on how to, be more, delegate more, or whatever it may be. So I just found it very valuable. Well, first thing is about yourself. I think that's the most important thing, that there's a self-awareness piece, and to, you can only control yourself, right? So if you can go in being your best self, the better. And two, maybe also just be a little bit more prepared about the person you'll be working with. And so that you can be your best self for that person.
Yeah. I think that it's so powerful. And, it's something I really believe wholeheartedly should be a part of every partnership, every company. I often will offer out to people that I work with, hey, if you want to do this with your spouse, I'm happy to support you with that too. Because it's been a game changer for us to, and we work on self-awareness, and yet it's taken us to a whole different level. So I'll put some information about the Cloverleaf for sure. But really there's just different, that's the inspired action on this, is to really dig into knowing self.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that work, then it's about knowing others. But you said it really clearly. If you don't first do the work on knowing self, and you also said something I just want to kind of amplify is, when I said that we don't know what we don't know because we're who we are, the strengths piece is actually what I've come to understand is the biggest part that we don't see. We don't see our sacred gifts easily.
That's fair.
So when I said it is absolutely from a strengths perspective, I want to leverage these tools as a strengths perspective. I tell people that all the time. Of course, we have things we want to work on, but they are a tool to help us see the best of ourselves and amplify that.
Helps with the confidence.
Absolutely. And self-worth and your frequency and your energy, and keeping that up. Because when we're in our flow of things that are our greatest genius zones, I mean, everything is easier, happier, more productive, all of those things.
And I just find it amazing every time, like 9 times out of 10, when I'm reading something about you, it's about how great of a relationship builder you are, and how much you're thinking of others, and it's leverage Laurie in this way, and so forth. And it just, wow, that's a super power on how often it comes up. So that's really cool to see. And then you're right. And about yourself, it's nice to see that, hey, yeah, maybe I am really good at that. Maybe I'm a really good problem solver. Maybe I need to leverage that more and give myself some credit. It's easy to kick yourself all the time, but it's nice to know that, hey, we're doing some things right here. So
yeah, and I think even looking over the last couple of years at a lot of yours, like a lot of you will see themes over time, and then it almost becomes this, as you develop in that area, the theme seems to change. So really that theme of step into leadership. Don't get in the weeds. Let other people do that. You're good at data and analysis and problem solving. Like, it is a superpower you have. And also you can't have your hands in everything. And so it kept reminding you, step into that higher place of relationship building, purposeful partnerships, collaboration, less control of everything. Yeah, and as you did that, it's
been a game changer.
It's been a game changer.
Game changer.
Yeah, for sure. That's so cool. Okay, so that's your inspired action for communication. I think we just had one more area that we thought would be fun to share, and that is celebration. Because, I kind of like to talk about celebration a lot.
You do.
Maybe I'll let you start.
Well, first, celebrate for our first podcast together on your new journey. So congratulations.
We don't like how our glasses cling.
Oh, listen, try.
Oh, anyway.
This is I'll say, Laurie, that this is something you really helped me with a lot. Because I don't think I've, over my years, have done a great job celebration. I think as leaders, we tend to do the thing and we do this, we have this great result, and it's, as soon as it's done, it's like, okay, and move on to the next. And I've really come to realize, and how much more fun it is, maybe more than anything, how much more fun it is to stop, smell the roses, and actually celebrate. And celebrate not just the big stuff, but also the little stuff. And number one, you and I, we have had so much fun celebrating the wins, right? We have so much fun together. Love it. And I think what I love more, I don't know if I love more, because I really love doing that. But what I also love is I'm really doing a better job with my team to celebrate the successes. I just had a leader get a CPA, and I don't need to tell you how difficult that is to get your CPA. You're running accounting for, you're consulting with an accounting firm, and all those people trying to get their CPA, and you share with me how difficult it was. And when I was working on this individual, the hours of studying, the weeks and weeks of studying and whatnot. And then when he finally got that CPA and he passed it, it was like this 500 pound off his shoulders. And, you know, when I gave him a little gift and said, hey, you and your wife go out and celebrate that moment and open up that bottle of bubbly and then cherish it. And he was so appreciative of that. And, yeah, it's just important, and it makes you want to do more. And then I think it also just makes you more grateful and appreciative of that accomplishment. So,
we're just grateful and appreciative in general of life, of the, so I haven't talked about it in quite some time. And so I think maybe we'll just take a moment to actually share where the whole celebration thing started. Is Gerard and I are both recovering workaholics and have to remind ourselves consistently that that's not a value we want to own as a badge of honor. I know that, right? We're ambitious, we're driven for sure. And we have done the work to allow ourselves to believe that we can be ambitious and have inner peace, and we can be successful, and we can have a fulfilled life, and we can spend time having fun, and we can work. And that took us some purposeful pauses and committed. It was a commitment at first. This is so ridiculous to say out loud now, but I hope with some of you listening, this is going to resonate. We didn't know how to pause. We didn't know how to celebrate. We didn't know how to do that without guilt.
it's the guilt.
It's the guilt.
It's not so much the...
Yeah, we could do it.
Well, yeah, but it's not so much that we're not working, like, we're still working hard. We're still getting...
That's what I said.
Yeah.
We're ambitious.
But it's...
driven.
It's that guilt thing to say, oh,
Yeah.
celebrate, and do I really deserve it?
Right.
Or it was this weird guilt piece.
Yeah. So when I turned 50, I knew there had to be another way.
You're over 50.
Yeah, I know. It's shocking. And I didn't really actually even know what that other way was. But through that sort of uncovering or unraveling piece was, let's try this pop the cork Friday thing. Yeah. And let's commit to being done work at 4:00 on Fridays and pop the cork and enjoy. And we don't often hit the 4:00.
We failed a few times.
Because
we're so committed to it.
But we get to the 5.
But we're
not working till 7 or 8.
No.
On it.
Friday.
Exactly.
No.
And so, it feels great. And it took a whole year of being committed to that before I could actually consciously tell you it feels so good. So when you hear us talk about pop the cork and celebration, I believe that when you celebrate, you actually are giving yourself more energy. You're allowing yourself to rejuvenate. You're refueling. You're doing all of these great things. This counterintuitive the harder we work, the better we do. We got to sacrifice things for success. It's absolutely not true. We need to rest, reflect, rejuvenate, pause, allow ourselves to love this life. Like, it's the life that we get to have and the relationships in our life that matter. So I always want to remind people every so often that this was a conscious choice that wasn't actually easy. And so it's part of the conversation I want to keep almost as a movement, that we continue to celebrate. And I think it's also important to say it isn't always pop the cork bubbly. We say that because that was the choice we made so that we would slow down. But we also aren't here to promote alcohol. Choose your thing. Whatever that thing is, that was the thing we chose. And so you'll often hear us say pop the cork, but it could be referring to any other thing that is about slowing down and celebrating. And we will all have a different way to do that. And so that is kind of where it all started. We're really purposeful about it. That's the inspired action is, as an ambitious leader, you will have to get purposeful about this. And it could feel uncomfortable at first.
Yeah.
And I want to just encourage you, the other side of that uncomfortable is magical.
Yeah. I just want to add to that the importance of all of those things. You have to look after yourself physically. We do have some very ambitious habits with our morning schedule.
We have some sacred rituals.
Yes.
That's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. But the celebration, and I think all of those things combined, the morning rituals, the good work ethic, great work ethic, and then the celebration, I think really also helps with the mental health part of it. So I know you've shared with me many times with how many, a lot of people you work with, and the challenging, anyone I speak with as well, so many people are going through some very hard times and feel a burnout and whatnot. And when you can celebrate and be in gratitude, look at things in a lens that is like, is it really that hard, right? This is just part of the journey, and laugh at each other, not take each other so seriously, and pop cork every now and then and celebrate those successes. It makes life so much more fun. And I think you do that. I think there'll be just a little less mental health challenges in the world. So I think it's important.
Yeah. And celebrate each other. So this beautiful gold bottle here is Gerard actually gifted me when we launched this whole new movement. And it meant the world to me that he took the time to think about celebrating that together, and that he has been such a huge inspiration all along the way of the business, and absolutely my biggest supporter and the wind beneath my wings on the moments where, I absolutely will talk a lot on this podcast about things like self-worth and going through that. And I have had some struggles with that, and health issues, autoimmune. And so having a partner who reminds you when maybe you forget it's a moment to celebrate, or you're kind of got your blinders on and you're just trying to climb that next mountain, that's really vital to the journey as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a woman, as hopefully for you too, all of it, the spouse. And so I'm eternally grateful that we do this, what can seem like hard work, so that we get to celebrate the magical moments. And we haven't popped it yet. It's just sitting there as a ceremonial bottle. We popped something else to share, and we'll find the moment. My brother was home. He lives overseas, and he was home this past week, and he said, sometimes you buy the bottle and you wait until the moment presents itself. And I thought that was very wise advice from my elderly brother. So when the moment presents itself, but it's still ceremonial for the celebration that happened, for sure. Yeah.
Sad.
So that was fun. Do you have any final words?
I think a lot has been said there. I just think the importance of that support, I think, is so important, so critical for one another. I think it's very healthy in business and also in relationship. And I love the fact that you brought up celebration. So it makes life so much more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for being here.
I think I'd be worthy of this. So,
Oh.
I feel honored.
I have a feeling we'll be seeing Gerard again as we continue on this journey. So thank you for joining us on the podcast. Until next time, we continue to be ambitious, awaken ourselves, and move into alignment. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, everyone.